Hi guys, this is Lashad from Scarlet Moon Creations, and I'm back with video 2 of my series videos reading. This is the second video. Like I said, do check out the first video where I talk about the series that I need to catch up on that are complete, meaning the author has put out all the books that I am aware of for those particular series, and I just need to catch up and finish them or complete them. Today's video is all about the ongoing series that I need to catch up on, meaning the author has not quite finished publishing all the books in the series that they plan to, and for a lot of these there is no end in sight, particularly for my favorites. This I like series, like I mentioned in several other booktube content videos, so the longer the better to me. And yeah, let's get started because like I mentioned in the other video, there are 30 plus book series that I need to get caught up on. This is not a drill. I'll try to keep this as quick as possible. So let's jump right in. The first series that I need to get caught up on is Outlander by Diana Gabaldon. This is a historical fiction series with a little bit of a sci-fi element. We have the main character, Claire, who is from 1940s England. She and her husband were both involved in the World War at the time, and now that the war is over, they're taking their first vacation in Scotland, and while in Scotland, off wandering the hills of heather on her own, she comes across this group of standing stones, and she touches one and finds herself back in the past. Claire winds up I think in late 1700s Scotland, and the adventure starts from there. I love this series. I've been reading it pretty much since the beginning. These are chunky. This is not the first book. The first book is called Outlander. I think this is book number 4 or 5. 4 or 5. I don't remember. Drums of Autumn. I don't know where my other books are, so I just grabbed this one as a thing to hold up. I like this series. It has elements that I enjoy. I enjoy the romance between Claire and Jamie, and now it's a TV show, which I am loving. I didn't know the series was still ongoing. They're chunky, so Diana doesn't put them out like every year or even every other year. It's not, she doesn't have like a set schedule. So I made it up to book number 6, and I went through a period of time where I wasn't reading anything book-wise. So I don't know. I just, in my head, I thought it was done. I figured we were finished. But I found out I was wrong when the TV show came out. And I was like, oh, I love that series. Let me go see. And then find out she's still putting books out. So this is ongoing. There are currently 9 books out, though I think that 9th one is coming out soon. I think early or sometime in 2020. So yeah, do check this out and watch the TV show. It's great too. Next up, I've got the Chronicles of Nick by Sherilyn Kenyon. This is the first book. This is a YA fantasy series with some mythological elements. This series is a offshoot of another of my favorite series, The Dark Hunters, which I'll get to in a second. But This follows Nick Gautier, who is a New Orleans native, and he is finding out about his powers and his past, or his parents' past, and how he got these powers. Um, I don't know how to talk about this without giving stuff away from for the other series, so I'll leave it at that. Nick is very charismatic, and you definitely root for him. I am a bit confused about how many books there are. I remember vaguely hearing something about 12 when this one came out, because the author is very good about like talking about her series and stuff, and her plans. But this is like Nick's past. Grown up Nick is in the other series already, and he's trying to go back in this series to kind of fix his life so it doesn't wind up as world ending as it apparently will be if he stays on the course he is on in the main series, which is an adult fantasy series. That's all I can say. I've read, what does it say here? 7 of the books, and there's one more coming out soon, or one more out already, and then there's something about a transition to the other 4, but I'm confused. I just know there's still more to come. Check out this series if you're interested. Next, we have my all-time favorite series, the Anita Blake Vampire Hunter series by Laurel K. Hamilton. This is book number 1. Just to give you an idea, they start out this small, but they get thicker, guys. They get thicker. This is an adult urban fantasy series set in St. Louis, Missouri for the most part. Anita Blake, it says she's a vampire hunter, and she is, but she's also a necromancer. And this just follows Anita as she deals with her life, her growing powers, her changing outlook on things, and her relationships with people. There's a lot of romance. I think the first 8 to 10 books really deals kind of with a love triangle between Anita, a vampire, and a werewolf. It's not the typical love triangle though, so don't write it off for that. This series, a lot of people, especially longtime readers like me, have sort of a love-hate relationship with it. A lot of people went in the beginning loving how Anita is, but her character develops into a different person, as we all do, as she has experiences, and many don't like how smutty and sexy this gets. We start off with Anita having no sex at all and turning down everyone who even bats an eyelash at her, literally, to her having sex with multiple people. She's not cheating, it's just orgies and multiple partner scenarios in detail. So the series does not become erotica, but there are some very erotic scenes. I definitely probably shouldn't have been reading this when I was the age as I was, but it's fine. I was fine. Yeah, check it out. It's urban fantasy. The world, regular human beings know that werewolves and vampires and other were-animals and other supernatural beings exist. Many people have psychic powers as well, and Anita works with police departments as both a necromancer as a vampire hunter. So there's some politics in here. There are lots of vampire politics in here, and werewolf politics, and just normal human politics. There are laws. How do we lock up these people, witches, vampires, werewolves, etc., when they can easily get out? How do we charge them for crimes? How do we deal with that kind of thing? Um, are vampires, do they have souls or do they not have souls? Can they be saved if we're following a Abrahamic religion? Um, Things like that. So check it out. It's my favorite series of all time, point blank period. Moving on before I just wax poetic forever, we have the Fever series by Karen Marie Moning. I always have a little bit of a hard time pronouncing her name, so I say it slowly like that. This is not book one. I think this might be book one. Basically, we follow Michaela or Mac, who is kind of a fluffy bunny type of girl. She comes from a well-to-do family in the United States. She has a sister who goes to Ireland and then dies there, and Mac and her parents are told, oh, it was an accident or something like that, but it turns out she was murdered because she leaves this message on Mac's cell phone. So Mac actually, you know, goes outside of her comfort zone, outside of her normal personality, because these are not normal circumstances, and she doesn't believe that her sister was died in an accident because of this message that was left on her phone. So she takes herself off to Ireland to find out what happens to her sister, and she gets involved in a lot of dark, mysterious, supernatural things while trying to investigate on her own in a foreign country what happened to her sister. The Fae are the main supernatural beings in this, and Mac finds herself really in the midst of a lot of political maneuvering with them. This series, I picked this up randomly, I think in a supermarket, and I know everyone else who started this series with you, you think it's going to be pretty light, and yes, there's the murder, and Mac turns out to have more depth to her character, even in this first book. But as the series goes on, it gets deeper and darker and more intense, and the world building is insane. At a later point, we switch over to another person's point of view. I'm not sure I'm loving that. That's why I kind of stopped after book 5. I'm in the middle of Ice, which is the first book with the other girl's point of view, and this is a child, and it's just her voice is a little bit annoying, especially if we've all gotten used to Mac. This girl, this actual child is not, she's a little bit wild, and her justifications for her actions are not the greatest, especially from an adult point of view, someone with more life experience. So it's a little bit of a struggle for me to get through, but I'm trying because there are a total of 11 books so far and more to come, and I hear the next couple of books, after the next couple of books, we go back to Mac's point of view, and I would like to see that because things got really intense in 5 books. So, next series, oh wait, is actually a manga series. It's Shingeki no Kyojin, or Attack on Titan. I love this series. I don't really buy manga or even comics. I don't have the space for the amount of books that I currently own, so having so many volumes, even the collected volumes of manga, would be insane. So I get these from the library, like most people, most of the time, I mean. So this series is also an anime series, and I'm watching the anime, but I'm reading the manga because, of course, it's ahead. This is let's just say it's a fantasy series set. It seems both futuristic but also historical in a way. I don't know how to put it. But basically, we're in a world where the last of the human race is living within these cities behind these giant walls. Why? Because outside of the walls is dangerous. All that's outside of the walls are titans as far as they know. Titans are these huge monstrous beings. They look humanoid, but they eat human beings. And that's why regular people don't go outside the walls. But one day the colossal titan shows up, and it's the only titan they've ever seen that's taller than the walls, and it creates a hole through the walls and lets in all these titans. And we follow our main character, Eren, whose family gets killed. He and his best friends join the army, and because they want to fight back. They lost their families and they want to fight the Titans. There's a particular sect of the army that actually goes out beyond the walls. They do scientific research and scouting and also killing of Titans that they come across, and we just follow the story from there. I can't say any more without spoiling anything, but it is insane. This is definitely an adult manga, an adult anime. It's very gory, very bloody, very violent, and like life is hard. Even within the walls, protected from the Titans, there's politics, there's so much character depth and growth. It's just amazing. Like, this is one of the few manga I later on in life, when I have more space, I definitely want to buy so I can own and reread over and over again. Anyway, so how many? There are 30 volumes out in English right now. I've read 26. Honestly, I haven't caught up to their 30 only because I am doing Beat the Backlist. So no 2019 releases this to be read by me this year. But next year I will be catching up because I need to know what happens next. Next series, another all-time favorite, the In-Depth series by J.D. Robb. J.D. Robb is the pseudonym for Nora Roberts. Nora Roberts is one of the most well-known writers in America currently, particularly her romance. This, however, is not exactly a romance. Most often, I think it winds up in the thriller suspense section or bookstores and Goodreads, because this is following Eve Dallas, not to be confused with Eve Duncan, which I mentioned in the other video. Eve Dallas is a lieutenant in the NYPSD, and this is a futuristic series. I'm trying to remember what year we start out in. I think it's 2056 or 57. So it's futuristic. This is New York City in the future. This is the world in the future. Like I said, she's a police lieutenant, and each book has different cases that she's currently dealing with, but we also get her backstory. Eve has been through a lot. She's an orphan, and her how she became an orphan, why she became an orphan, and how she's been dealing with her life since then is pretty tragic. In this first book, she meets Rourke, an Irish billionaire and former criminal, in the middle of a case while she's looking for, I think, a serial killer. But yeah, so there are 50 books. You just hit 50. I'm up to 47. Again, the reason I'm not like finished, caught up is because the of Beat the Backlist. I love these. I love catching up with Eve and Rourke and all of the other cast of secondary tertiary characters. I love the development of both Eve and Rourke, how they come together, how they deal with their lives and the lives of their friends. It's just really good. I love the cases for the most part. Some books are more case focused and case heavy. Other books are less and more relationship. Not just Eve and Rourke's relationship, but their relationships with their friends, co-workers, subordinates, family, things like that. It's really, I just like being around them when I'm reading. Their Even Work is actually one of my top three favorite like book couples of all time. So do check out the In-Depth series. All the titles are something in depth, so you'll never miss it. Next up, we've got the Ghost Walker series by Christine Feehan. I've read a lot of Christine Feehan series. There's none that I don't like. There's some that I've gotten tired of and stopped reading. The Dark series, because that became redundant over and over. Every book seemed to have the same story. Um, This book, this series, this is the first one that I'm holding up, is a paranormal fiction, urban fantasy kind of thing, urban paranormal. It's set in modern day, and basically this governmental associated scientist Peter Whitney does all these experiments to create or enhance psychic powers on people, some willing, a lot of others not. The willing ones that for the most part that we know about are a bunch of military men from different backgrounds, and they volunteer, but there's also a bunch of girls and women who did not volunteer that Whitney either stole or kidnapped, or he adopted out of the goodness of his heart, and then he experiments on them to give them psychic powers or to enhance psychic powers he thinks they already have. So these are romance, but also we get the military aspect of things as each couple comes together to figure out like what they're gonna do, because basically people start to figure out, people meaning those being experimented on, that Mr. Whitney's not on the up and up. So he realizes that and then disappears. They all are trying to find him and figure out how they can live regular lives, but also alert the general public without turning into monsters or scary people to be locked up and away from the regular public by the general government. And it's just really interesting. I don't know about you, I find this interesting. So yeah, check out this series. I have read 9 out of the 16 books that are out. One book actually recently came. I've been wanting to catch up since the beginning of this year, and finally that book became available at the library, and it's the large print version. So, we're not even halfway through. Sit back, we'll keep going. Next up, we have the Mercy Thompson series. This is by Patricia Briggs. This follows a Native or half Native American, not werewolf, I almost said, coyote shifter who is also a Volkswagen mechanic. Not just the bugs, but the brand as well. She's a general mechanic, but her specialty is Volkswagen. You will find out lots about that in this series, let me tell you. So, Mercy lives next door to a werewolf and who uses his house as the pack house. So lots of his pack comes by. Mercy was raised by werewolves, but not this one, because she's basically the only coyote shifter that anyone is aware of existing on the planet. And she's fine with that. She mostly lives her life as a regular person. Like I said, she's a mechanic. But she winds up just falling into all of these random situations with the fae or werewolves or vampires and things like that as her life goes on. And then since she winds up accidentally being in these situations, she starts to be more proactive about making sure humans and those less fortunate or less strong supernatural beings are taken care of and not just stomped on in the middle of all the wars and hoopla. Regular people, because this is an urban fantasy, regular people know that all of these supernatural beings exist, but most of the beings try to keep their oddness, their difference on the down low. Any politics, any issues, they try to keep away from human eyes and ears because they have tentative agreements with the government. So another cool, interesting urban fantasy. Like I said, I enjoy these. Oh, I didn't tell you, there are 12 Mercy books. I've read 10. We'll catch up soon, probably next year. An offshoot series from the Mercy Thompson series set in the same world is Alpha and Omega. So urban fantasy, people know that supernatural beings exist, but we try to keep things on the DL. We follow Anna and Charles. Charles is kind of like a stepbrother to Mercy. His father is the one who raised her. His father is the leader of all of the werewolves in North America. Charles is his enforcer, basically. He's a very strong alpha male, and what that means for werewolves, not just like, oh, I'm the boss kind of thing. It's not that. He's not like overbearing and pushy and do what I say. It's just more, he has a certain amount of power, and he's lived for several hundred years, and he's kind of the boogeyman. If people don't follow what his father says, Charles goes out and deals with the problem, and you don't want Charles to come deal with the problem. And in the course of dealing with a problem, Charles finds out about Anna, who is a brand new werewolf and something that is very rare, an Omega werewolf. Now, in this world, an Omega werewolf is kind of the opposite of an alpha, but that doesn't mean they are less than. They have their own powers, but they're more passive than aggressive, and they complement one another. So on top of that, Charles and Anna find themselves being attracted to each other, and Charles winds up helping Anna, be a werewolf. And what I like about this series is that it's not insta-love, and their relationship is not instantly perfect and wonderful. Over the course of the series, we see them going through trials and tribulations, trying to figure out how to be together, if they want to be together. And Anna has gone through some huge trauma in becoming a werewolf, so she's dealing with that. So yeah, there are 5 books in this series, and I've read all 5. They are amazing. Do check it out. Next up, actually we are halfway through this, so ignore me. Um, we have The Black Dagger Brotherhood by J.R. Ward, very popular amongst the romance set. Those who like paranormal romance, I might, if the next couple of books don't do it for me, I might give this series up, but I do want to continue for now. This is a paranormal romance series that follows the Black Dagger Brotherhood, who are vampires. They are part of a vampire race. They are not the usual vampires. I don't know how to describe it. Like, they don't really drink human blood, I don't think. They drink blood from each other and from certain people. So yeah, the Black Dagger Brotherhood are kind of like the protectors, the enforcers of the vampires. This first book follows Wrath, who is the king of vampires and the leader of the Black Dagger Brotherhood. He's blind, and they are fighting against the Slayers, the Lessening Society, who are their natural born enemies. They are kind of like zombies, I guess. It's really hard to describe, but anyway, it's very interesting. These guys are supposed to be lonely warriors, with the exception of the king, and they are also kind of shunned by their own race, even though they protect it because they're so different from the average vampire. But do check it out. It's very cool. I will say that J.R. Ward has interesting naming and slang in this. It's urban fantasy, so it's set in a fictional upstate New York town. So like all your modern conveniences are in there, plus whatever vampire things. But yeah. Next we have the Psy-changeling series by Nalini Singh. You've heard me talk about this series because I've done a couple of readathons with books from this, and the next one I'll mention. Nalini Singh has quickly become a favorite author of mine over the past like 5 or 6 years. There's nothing I've read from her that I have not really enjoyed. So this is set in this futuristic urban world. Like, it's like our world, but it's in the future, and we have three races for the most part. The human beings. We have changelings, which are basically shapeshifters. There are various animals. There are bears. There are wolves. There are leopards. I think they're leopards or some other cats. This is not the first book in the series, but one of the earliest ones. And the last race are the Psy, which is the most unique part of this series as far as I'm concerned with paranormal anything. The Psy are basically mentally enhanced human beings, whereas the changelings have all of the supernatural powers or strengths that they get from having a connection to an animal, being able to change into an animal, having stronger emotions. The Psy have gotten rid of their emotions in silence, and they're all cerebral, logical, and they have psychic powers. And they live very minimalist life and focus on, anything non-emotional. I don't know quite how to describe it. It's just really fascinating. So we see how the world, all these races are dealing with each other, how things work within the packs for the changelings, and how things work in the Psynet, and how each race interacts with each other. There's a lot of political things going on. There's also more down to the earth, regular people things happening, and it's romance, so there's a couple in every book that we focus on, and they can be of any combination or variety. It's really good. There are, where am I? 18 books so far. I've read 13. I'm only hesitating right now because the next book, I don't think I care about that couple. So we'll see. But I'm definitely gonna continue even if I skip the next book. But I love this series. Another series by Nalini Singh is the Guild Hunter series. Again, been catching up on this year. I've read several books in readathons, so you've seen my wrap-ups and stuff where I talk about them. The Guild Hunter novels are, again, like an urban fantasy, but angels rule the world, particularly archangels, of which there are a cadre of 10, and the Archangel of New York is Raphael. And he's not just the Archangel of New York, he lives in New York. It's just that he's the Archangel of North America, let's say that. And he has thousands of angels under him, as do all archangels, and they make vampires. How they make vampires, you'll find out. But some vampires don't like the fact that in exchange for becoming vampires, they have to sign a contract to basically work for, be a servant for the angels for 100 years. No big deal. We all live a long time, right? But, some vampires try to get out of their contract once they've been made, and that's where the guild hunters come in. Guild hunters are usually just human beings. Some have a little extra power for some reason or another, and they go out and they hunt down these vampires who try to skip out on their contracts. For the most part, we follow Elena, who's a vampire hunter with the guild, and Raphael, who meet because there is some weird serial killer vampire out there that even Raphael can't quite predict how he does things. Elena is a little bit different and a little bit stronger than most of the guild hunters, so he picks her. We see them get together, and then we see the world expand, and it's awesome. I love, like, the found family, like Raphael's seven, the guild hunters, the politics with all the angels and the archangels, what's going on, everybody's power dumping, and not, there's a lot of death and blood and gore in this too. I have read 12, I've read 10 of the 12 books in this series, so I'm almost there. Next up, another favorite that I know where it's going, but I want to continue. This is the Dark Hunter series by Sherilyn Kenyon. This is the series that is a companion that, this is the series that the Chronicles of Nick, which I mentioned earlier, is the companion to. I'm just going to throw everything in the Dark Hunter universe in here, so if you go check out her website, there's Dark Hunters, Were Hunters, Dream Hunters, the, like, Mists of Avalon. There's a bunch of other things. Not everything is set in the same world, but she has several series in the Dark Hunter universe, and it's fascinating. There's a huge mythological element in here. Basically, Dark Hunters are vampires, but not at all your usual. They don't drink blood at all. These guys were made by were made by a goddess, and given their powers, once they died in whatever historical time they did, she approaches them in her goddess form and offers them the chance to live again if they work for her as dark hunters. They agreed, and then they lived forever stuck working for her, and it is awesome. It's romance, definitely. There's always a couple that we're focusing on every book, but oh, the world building. It's to the point now there's so many people and it's, it's very realistic. Like we live in a world, there's billions of people in this world. How many people do you interact with in your daily life, within your work? There's tons of people in companies you work for. Even if you work for yourself, you have lots of contractors and people you deal with. That's a lot of people. This world has become so big that I'm forgetting some people that have been mentioned in previous books, or more than mentioned. They have a huge role, but I'm like, wait, who's that again? So I need to go back to a certain point, about halfway from where I am now. Um, I'm not even gonna talk about how many. There's roughly 30 books, excluding the Chronicles of Nick in this series. I'm up to 26. I need to go back about 10 and reread those because I'm just confused now by some people. But otherwise, so well written, and you fall in love with these guys and girls because there are female dark hunters, and check it out. Next, we have, let me just make sure, The Cosmere by Brandon Sanderson. Now, technically, this is not one series, but I'm just going to throw them all in here because it's a lot. I started this year thanks to from Elliot Brooks. I'll link her channel down in the description below. But basically, the Cosmere is this universe that Brandon Sanderson has created, and there are different worlds or different countries within it, and there are some overlapping characters, but not a ton. I started off with Elantris and Warbreaker, which are standalone books, earlier this year, and I am in the middle or the end of the first Mistborn trilogy. I'm behind on the read along, way behind, because everybody's read both Mistborn trilogies and they're in the middle of the Stormlight Archive. I'm still trying to finish the last Mistborn trilogy, the first Mistborn trilogy. I hope to get that book, Hero of Ages, soon. So I'm going by Elliot Brooks's read-along list. There are more books in the Cosmere than what she has. Again, I'll link it down in the description, her video where she talks about the read-along. So if we're talking about just that, there are 12 books in the Cosmere read-along that Elliot set up, and I've read 5. I like Brandon Sanderson's writing style. I love the world building. The magic systems are interesting and well described, and the characters are so fascinating. Character depth is definitely like the best I've ever seen. Their motives are just on point always, and realistic and fascinating. You just want to know what these people are doing next and why, and you will find out. It's just really good writing. So next up, I've got the Dresden Files by Jim Butcher. This is book number 2, so not the first one. This is another urban fantasy, and the first one I ever read by a man. A couple of years ago, I was like, I read like literally all female authors. Let me look for some guys that are not chauvinistic and disgusting. So one of the internet's recommendations were Jim Butcher, and I've not been disappointed. I've read other stuff from him and loved it, but this is an ongoing series that I have not completed, and this follows Harry Dresden, who is a wizard private investigator, and probably the only one of its kind, of his kind. They made a TV show out of this. It didn't do well. I did like the person they set up as the actor to play Harry, but I don't know. The rest was kind of meh. Anyway, so Harry's a wizard in Chicago doing private detective things. He's going through a lot. He lives a very stressful life. He has money problems and women problems and magic problems at that. The magic is very much rooted in reality and science. So there's no just like waving a magic wand or whatever. Sometimes his shit don't work because he don't have enough energy or things like that, and it's just like, oh damn, what you gonna do now, Harry? Harry is very real and down to earth, and you just want to root for him. There are lots of paranormal elements. There are other wizards, witches, whatever. The Fae come into this. Vampires come into this. Were-animals come into this. It might just be werewolves, but I don't want to say that in case I'm forgetting something. But yeah, so amazing. Check it out. Ow. We're getting into this, guys. We're getting into this. The next series I'm going to talk about is the All Souls series by Deborah Harkness. This is like the fourth book in this series. It's more like there's the All Souls trilogy, and then this is an offshoot focusing on a secondary character from that trilogy. But Deborah Harkness is just like it's all in the All Souls world, so it doesn't matter. There will be more books. I love this. This has got everything I enjoy this series. There's paranormal, there's romance, there's historical stuff, there's time travel, uh there's science, there's fantasy. What more can I say other than the fact that the main trilogy follows Diana, who's a witch who doesn't really have much magical power, if any at all. She just lives her life as I think it's an Oxford professor, until she takes a book out of the library that has some magic in it, and when she sends it back after she leaves, she becomes a person of importance to vampires, excuse me, vampires, werewolves, and demons. And she meets another Oxford professor, scientist guy who's a vampire. They create a relationship, in the backdrop of trying to get this book out again because she can't, but everybody else is trying to get her, and because there are all these people who've been looking for this book for centuries, and she's the only one who could get it. And we try to find out why and what's so important about the book. So this is set in like a modern day world most of the time, and human beings do not know any of the others exist. That is the path that they've all agreed on. Human beings cannot know. And hijinks ensue from there. I love this series. It's really good. So that's the end of part one of all the ongoing series that I would like to catch up on. There's going to be a part two of this video because this one is already ridiculously long. I appreciate you sitting through all of this. Let me know, have you have you read any of these series? We're reading books, legit, God. Have you read any of these series? What did you think about them? Are you caught up? Are you ahead of where I am? I tried to give you like how many books are totally out right now. Some there are about to come out, like the end of this year or next year, so I included that in the number. And are you caught up to the most recent releases? Does it get better from where I'm at? Let me know. And let me know if I should prioritize any of these series that I've mentioned. I'm gonna have a whole other list in a second video, like I already said. And so be sure to look out for that and let me know if I should prioritize any of those as well. What are your favorites? I want to hear, I want you to gush. I wish I could say more about each of these series, but we'd be here forever, and I don't want that. I need to get some circulation in my booty. Thank you so much for watching. I'll see you guys in the next video. Bye.